Welcome back, rankers. I want to get right into it this week. A question is coming in from Maiko54, who says, does Google have plans to transcribe audio component of video to make it searchable? God, I hope not. The reason I say that is because obviously that would make a lot of sense, right? It's sort of the next logical step for Google to go, but you know, they're already doing closed captions on video and they're trying to transcribe these things on the fly. And if you just have a look at mine, they're absolutely terrible. They turn out as gobbledygook. So I don't know whether that's because I'm not articulating properly, or it's the Australian accent, or it's a bit of both. Makes sense for them to do it, but they're going to have to become Apple-like in their ability to understand different dialects and accents and all those sorts of things. Good question, though. I want to talk to you a little bit today about Adwords. Now, many of you know that we do Adwords campaigns for clients, but we only do them when they're doing SEO. So the idea is that we use the Adwords and the SEO together to have a more rounded campaign for a client. There's a few things that you need to understand with Adwords, and I'm not going to get into the mechanics of it today or anything like that, but just how it works in conjunction with an SEO campaign. It's great because you can use Adwords to target specific phrases right now and switch it on and see what happens, or just this weekend, or for a specific time frame or a specific geographical region. And so it allows you to target a lot better. And one of the things that you're going to find when you get into keyword analysis is that Google tools will all tell you something different about what's popular and what's not. And I want to take you back a couple of weeks to our Gasp Clothing, Gasp Melbourne experiment or blog posts and the shows that we did it on back then and the sort of traffic that we were getting from those phrases. Some of you may remember it was a major social media faux pas by an Australian fashion retailer. Anyway, everyone said, "Oh, it was terrible. That's the end of that company. They've committed social media suicide." Anyway, it hasn't hurt them, and the hoo-ha from that social media episode has gone away. But they got lots of great publicity out of the whole experience. We have a couple of posts on our site, so we ranked for those some of those Gasp keywords. And we were looking at the stats a few weeks ago, and we went and had a look at Google Insights. And Google Insights at the time was telling us that Gasp Clothing was more popular than Gasp Fail or Gasp Melbourne. Now you can see here, this is Google Insights for search, and you can see here there is a spike around that time that I'm talking about, specifically for Gasp Clothing. You know, Gasp Fail in relationship to Gasp Clothing doesn't even rate on the board anywhere. It's insignificant in comparison. And Gasp Melbourne, you know, we're seeing, 38% of what the Gasp Clothing searches are. Now, this is a worldwide search for the last 90 days. So I'm not going to, if I go to last 30, we see, you know, the relationship is pretty much similar, except now we don't have really any Gasp Melbourne data. But we still have that Gasp Clothing. Then when we go and have a look at, say, our webmaster tools, and this is the search queries, your site on the web search queries that I'm looking at, and because we're ranking for these phrases, I can get data on them within Google Webmaster Tools, and it will tell me the search impressions. And what we're seeing here is, you know, Gasp Clothing is 1,000 impressions and Gasp Melbourne is 700. So, and this is only the last 30 days. So it's saying something completely different to what Google Insights for Search is saying. So that's why I would recommend, if you're going to do AdWords, make sure you're using Webmaster Tools and make sure you've got it set up properly. And if you are already ranking for some phrases, you don't have to be ranking high. You don't have to be ranking on the front page to get this sort of data. You can be ranking, let's see, well, it says here 53. We're ranking for Gasp. So, and it's telling you there's been 500 impressions. Now, what you can go and do with AdWords is quickly test those numbers to see whether they're accurate or not. Now, interestingly, like we're seeing here, Gasp Melbourne 700 and Gasp Clothing 1000, that's in the last 30 days. If we go to the Google Keywords AdWords tool, that's hard to say, and we put those same three phrases in there, we see we get very, very different numbers. We're getting told, oh yeah, there's nearly 10,000 people a month search for Gasp Clothing. You've got to get into that, which of course is not true. So remember that the AdWords team, the Webmaster Tools team, they're different teams within Google. Of course they talk to one another, but they're totally different departments. So they're going to have different data. Now, these numbers here are made up of an average of what Google AdWords thinks the total global 12-month search would be. So it's an average, a monthly average. So it's obviously wrong. But you can do other things. But what I would do, I would use this tool in conjunction with your Google Webmaster Tools if you're already ranking for some phrases and you can start to see impressions. And, you know, the one thing here that is really outrageously inconsistent is that the relationship between that phrase and that phrase, according to Google Webmaster Tools. Not necessarily so when you look at Google Insights for search, but the one thing that is consistent is that Gasp Clothing is definitely the most popular phrase out of those three. So we're seeing that across the board. So that's what you take with you, and you can then go and test. And the mistake that a lot of businesses that we see when we take over their AdWords campaigns, the mistakes that have been made, is essentially they're paying too much for a phrase. And that can happen. Here's an easy example. On the weekend, my wife was Googling for a Dremel. If you don't know what a Dremel is like a small handheld drill, basically, that's got lots of different attachments. No, it wasn't for me. It was for her. And we Googled Dremel, and we can see here that we've finally got Bunnings that are doing AdWords, which is great to see. Bunnings are probably Australia's largest hardware retailer. And if we click on their ad, hopefully it's not costing them terribly much. Now look, we don't have the word Dremel actually in that ad. The same sorts of things that Google applies to organic, they want to see similar things in AdWords. And it's basically about relevance. They will reward relevance in your AdWords. If your ad is really relevant to the search, it's going to give you a higher quality score and possibly cost you less, and also increase your click-through rate. Because when someone does a search, they want to see what they've searched for. Now, I happened to click on that ad because it was Bunnings, and maybe the brand, you know, it's got a good click-through rate because of the brand. But I would say they're probably paying more than what's necessary, because there's a couple of things that's happening here. When you click on that ad, the word Dremel didn't appear in the ad itself. When we look at the source of this page, or the landing page that we're taken to, and great that we've got a landing page. You know, you see so many ads where they just drop you at the front page of the site or the home page, and that's really, really bad, because you're totally irrelevant. Someone's going to click on that ad, they're going to hit your page, which is your home page. Probably won't have a lot to do with their search if it was a very specific search. And then they're just going to hit the back button. That's going to, basically, it's a waste of money for you, and Google's going to charge you more if you do that sort of thing. So you've got to set up pages that are very specific to the search. And you can see here the page title right up. We're not specific to the search. We don't have Dremel actually in the page title. But when we do a search for that word actually on the page, in the copy, on the page, where is it? Right down here, narrow by brand. So this page isn't really relevant for my search. It might be relevant for that ad that appeared, but that ad is not relevant for my search. Because when I go and Google Dremel, search for Dremel on the Bunnings Warehouse site, there's a whole range of Dremel tools that I'm just not seeing. Now, not that you can buy off this site anyway, it's basically a catalogue site, but I would assume at some point in the future they're going to turn it into an e-commerce site. So that's an example of an ad campaign which could be, getting much better results than it probably currently is. Now, one of the other problems that Bunnings has with this particular ad campaign, and of course the other morning when we were sitting in bed Googling for a Dremel, I didn't have my desktop with me because that would indicate I'd be at the desk, not in bed. So, of course, I was using an iPad, an iOS device, a portable device, mobile device, whatever you want to call it. And I did the search for Dremel, and we'll just show you that. So that's the same page that we're seeing in Google Desktop. Then, unfortunately for Bunnings, if we click on their ad, try not to get the lights in the screen, we're just taken to that page there, which is obviously set up, and when you look at the URL, it's redirecting me to a mobile-friendly page so I can search my store. But it's got no relevance to what I was looking for. So, of course, I didn't look at Bunnings the other morning. I just looked at that page and went, wow, what a waste, and went and looked somewhere else. I actually went and looked, whilst I was mobile, at the Google shopping results, which, of course, Bunnings are not in because they're not transacting. But it's those sorts of things that can really hurt your quality score in an AdWords campaign. And there could just be 5 or 6 of them. And Google will punish, well, not punish, but basically you're going to be spending too much money and you're not going to be getting the best bang for your buck that you possibly could. And that, when we take over an AdWords campaign, they're typically the things that we have to go and fix and make things more targeted and all those sorts of things. Now, how you use that in conjunction with SEO is that you make sure that if a phrase is costing you a bundle, you better make sure you're ranking organically for that phrase as well. Because whilst a lot more people are clicking on ads now than what they used to, people still trust the organic results more than they do the ads. Just ask some of your customers, do you click on ads, do you click on organic results, and see what they come back with. But there's some of the basics of how you should be using AdWords and also organic search together. And hopefully that's helpful, and we'll see you next week. Thanks very much. Bye.